He saw Yuki-onna kill a woodcutter in the snow. What he did not know was that years later, that same woman would sleep beside him as his wife. That night, Minokichi should have died. He was trapped inside a frozen hut in the middle of a snowstorm beside his mentor, Mosaku. Outside, the wind erased the world. Inside, the cold cut through the wood, the skin, and the bones. Then, the door opened. A woman dressed in white entered without making a sound. She was too pale to be alive, too beautiful to be lost, too calm to feel the cold. Minokichi watched as she leaned over Mosaku and breathed. Within seconds, the old woodcutter was dead. Then, she turned her face toward the young man. But for some reason, she did not kill him. She left him with only one condition. If Minokichi ever told anyone what he had seen that night, she would return. Years later, he would break that promise, and he would discover that death had not returned through the door. Death was already inside his home. If you enjoy dark legends from ancient Japan, subscribe to Japan Darklore. Now, let us return to the night when the snow chose who would die and who would carry the secret. Yuki-onna means snow woman, but that name sounds almost too gentle for what she represents. In Japanese folklore, she appears when the snowstorm erases the roads, when the body begins to lose its strength, and when the silence becomes so deep that no one would ever hear a cry for help. She appears as a woman of impossible beauty. White skin, black hair, cold eyes, a face too calm to belong to the living. Some say she kills with her breath, freezing the life inside the body. Others say she only appears before lost travelers and lets the winner finish the work. But the most frightening part is not when she kills. It is when she chooses to spare someone. Because that night, Minokichi was not saved. He was chosen. Minokichi was young. He still had strength in his body and many years ahead of him. Mosaku, his mentor, was old, an experienced woodcutter, used to the silence of the mountains and the dangers of winter. That day, the two had gone out to work as usual. But in the mountains of old Japan, the weather could change too quickly. The sky darkened, the wind grew heavier, and the snow began to fall so hard that the path home disappeared in front of them. The forest became a white wall. Minokichi could barely see Mosaku ahead of him. Every step sank deeper. Every breath felt like it was cutting his throat. Mosaku understood first. If they kept walking, they would die before finding the village. So they searched for shelter. Near a river, they found a small abandoned hut. It was not warm, it was not safe, but it was better than being buried alive by the snow. They went inside, closed the door, and tried to wait for the storm to pass. Inside, there was only cold wood, still shadows, and the sound of the wind beating against the walls. Mosaku lay down first, exhausted. Minokichi stayed awake a little longer, watching his mentor's weak breathing in the darkness. Slowly, sleep began to take him, until he noticed something. The hut had become too silent, and that cold no longer seemed to come from the storm. Minokichi opened his eyes. The door of the hut was open. Outside, the storm was still roaring. Snow poured through the doorway as if the night itself were invading the shelter. Then he saw her. A woman standing at the entrance, tall, motionless, dressed in white. The wind moved around her, but she did not tremble. She did not breathe like a living person. She did not seem lost. She seemed to have arrived exactly where she wanted to be. Minokichi tried to call Mosaku, but his voice would not come out. The woman crossed the hut without making a sound. Each step seemed to steal more warmth from the air. Mosaku was asleep in the corner, too weak to realize that death had entered the room. The woman knelt beside him. For a few seconds, she only watched the old woodcutter. Then, she brought her face close to his and breathed. There was no scream, no struggle, no blood, only a white, cold, silent breath. Before Minokichi's eyes, Mosaku's body stiffened. His breathing vanished. The color left his skin. The old woodcutter died in seconds, as if the snow had entered his lungs and erased his life from within. Minokichi was frozen in place. He wanted to run. He wanted to close his eyes, but the woman was already rising. Slowly, she turned her face toward him, the same mouth that had frozen Mosaku, the same cold eyes, the same impossible calm. Then, Yuki-onna came closer. Without hurry, without effort, like someone who knew he had nowhere to run, she stopped before him, leaned close to his face, and Minokichi felt the air disappear from his lungs. Mosaku was already dead. Now it was his turn. But Yuki-onna did not breathe. She stood before him, so close that Minokichi could feel the cold coming from her skin. He could not speak. He could not beg for mercy. He could only wait for the same fate as Mosaku. Then she said he was young. Too young to die that night, and perhaps too beautiful to be wasted in the snow. But her voice did not sound like mercy. It sounded like a sentence postponed. Yuki-onna leaned closer and gave him one condition. He must never tell anyone what he had seen inside that hut, not his family, not his friends, not even the woman he might one day love. If a single word escaped his mouth, she would know, and she would return to kill him. Minokichi promised, not because he had a choice, but because, before Yuki-onna, a promise was not an agreement. It was the only way to keep breathing. After that, she stepped away. The snow was still entering through the open door. Mosaku was still dead on the floor, and the snow woman vanished into the storm. When morning came, Minokichi was still alive, but surviving Yuki-onna did not mean being free from her. It meant carrying the silence. And years later, that silence would enter his own home with him. Minokichi returned home, but he did not return whole. To everyone in the village, Mosaku had died from the cold. It was a simple explanation, and Minokichi let them believe it, because the truth was impossible to tell. He had seen a woman move through the snow as if she belonged to it. He had seen his mentor die from a single breath, and he had promised silence to a creature that could return at any moment. The years passed. Life tried to cover that night. Work returned. The voices of the village returned, but some memories do not disappear. They only learn to stay quiet. When snow fell, Minokichi felt the cold of the hut inside his body again. When he saw a woman dressed in white from a distance, his heart stopped for a moment. Then, on a cold day, he met Oyuki. She did not appear as a monster. She did not come in a storm. She was simply walking alone along the road, beautiful, pale, and silent. Her skin was too fair, her hair was too black, and her eyes had a calmness that should have felt like a warning. But Minokichi did not run. Perhaps because fear over time can turn into fascination, perhaps because the thing that haunts us can also attract us. Oyuki spoke very little about her past, and when winter came, she never seemed to feel the cold. Minokichi noticed, but he chose not to understand. After carrying a secret for so long, he wanted to believe that life could still offer him peace, so he allowed Oyuki to come closer. And little by little, the mysterious woman who seemed to have come from the snow began to occupy the most intimate place in his life. Not as a threat, but as his wife. Over time, Oyuki became part of the house, part of the days, part of Minokichi's breathing. To the village, she was only a beautiful, quiet, devoted woman, someone who cared for the home, spoke little, and seemed to carry a rare kind of gentleness. To Minokichi, she was something even more dangerous. She was proof that perhaps it was possible to live after that night. The years passed, and together, they had children. The house that had once seemed marked by a secret began to fill with small voices, soft footsteps, and human warmth. For a while, Minokichi almost believed he had truly escaped. almost believed the snow woman was only a memory buried in the past. But there were things about Oyuki that time could not explain. She remained young. Her beauty did not seem to fade. The cold never bothered her. And when snow fell outside, she would sometimes stare at the landscape for too long, not with fear, not with surprise, but like someone listening to a familiar voice. Minokichi noticed, but he ignored it, because there are truths the heart understands before the mind is willing to accept them. And after so many years, after the children, after the life they had built together, how could he admit that the peace inside his home might have the same face as the death he had seen in the hut? So he remained silent, until the night the silence finally broke. That night the house was quiet. The children were asleep. The lantern burned low, and outside, the snow began to fall again. Minokichi was sitting near Oyuki, watching his wife's face in the dim light. Perhaps it was the silence, perhaps it was the cold, or perhaps it was the way the snow touched the house, as if something ancient were calling to him from outside. But in that moment, the memory of the hut returned whole. The open door, Mosaku on the floor, the woman dressed in white, the breath, the death. Minokichi looked at Oyuki, and for the first time in many years, something in her face seemed far too familiar. The pale skin, the calm eyes, the silent beauty. Without realizing the danger, he began to speak. He told her that when he was young, he had been lost in a snowstorm with his mentor. He told her they had found shelter in a hut, and he told her that during the night, a woman appeared, white as snow, cold as death. Oyuki did not move. Minokichi continued. He said the woman knelt beside Mosaku. He said she breathed over him. He said he watched the old woodcutter freeze before his eyes, and then he told the part he should never have told. The woman had spared his life, but she had demanded silence. When Minokichi finished, the house became still. The lantern flame trembled, the air grew cold, and Oyuki raised her face, but it was no longer only the face of the wife he knew. The softness was gone. The calm remained, but now it was ancient, frozen, terrible. Then she said, almost without emotion, that he had finally told someone. Minokichi felt the blood leave his face. In that instant, he understood. It was not resemblance, it was not memory, it was not coincidence. The woman who shared his house, the woman who slept beside him, the mother of his children. She was the same Yuki-onna who had killed Mosaku that night. Death had not returned to claim Minokichi. Death had married him. Minokichi could not speak. The woman before him was his wife. But she was also the creature who, years earlier, had entered the hut and killed Mosaku with a single breath. The cold took over the room. The lantern nearly went out, and Minokichi understood that the promise had been broken. Yuki-onna had every right to kill him. That was the condition that had kept him alive for all those years. But then, her gaze moved away from Minokichi and turned toward where the children were sleeping. For a moment, the snow woman did not seem only like a murderous spirit. She also seemed like a mother. And perhaps that is one of the most unsettling parts of the legend, because she was capable of killing, but she was also capable of loving, capable of sparing, capable of abandoning. She told him that if it were not for the children, Minokichi would die that night, but because of them, she would let him live once more. Before leaving, she gave him one final warning. He must take good care of the children. If they ever suffered because of him, she would know, and she would return. Minokichi tried to call out to her. Perhaps he tried to ask for forgiveness. Perhaps he tried to say that he loved her. But some words arrived too late. Oyuki's body began to dissolve into the cold light of the snow. The face of the wife, the face of the mother, the face of the woman from the hut, all of it vanished like mist before winter. Within seconds, she was gone. The house still stood. The The children were still asleep. Minokichi was still alive, but the life he believed he had built had disappeared with her. Yuki-onna did not take his body. She took the lie that made that house feel safe, and that is why the legend of Yuki-onna is so disturbing, because it is not only about a creature that kills travelers in the snow. It is about something more intimate. Death did not appear to Minokichi as a twisted monster. It appeared as beauty, as silence, as desire, as the woman he loved, the mother of his children, the presence that shared his home for years. Minokichi was not simply spared. He was marked. Yuki-onna left a memory inside him that he could never forget, and waited. Waited until fear became silence, until silence became habit, until habit became family. When he finally broke the promise, the tragedy was no longer only about life and death. It was about trust, about love, about the question the legend never fully answers. Did Oyuki truly love Minokichi? Or did she only live beside him until the moment he broke the one rule that kept him alive? Both possibilities are frightening. If she never loved him, then he lived for years inside a lie. But if she did love him, then Yuki-onna was capable of loving, killing, sparing, and abandoning with the same calm face. And that may be even worse. So I leave the question to you. Do you think Yuki-onna truly loved Minokichi? Or did she simply wait for years until the moment he broke the promise? Write your answer in the comments, because perhaps each person sees a different Yuki-onna. To some, she is a monster. To others, a betrayed wife. And to others, proof that not every curse arrives screaming. Some enter in silence, sit beside you, sleep in your bed, and answer when you call them your wife. If you want to keep exploring forgotten legends, spirits, and the hidden side of ancient Japan, subscribe to Japan Darklore and join the keepers. Because some stories do not disappear with time, they only remain buried, waiting for the next snowfall.